I'm Audrey Thompson, 30 years old, and nothing prepares you for the moment you watch your own brother slap your 6-year-old daughter across the face right in front of your parents. And they laugh. My father smirked. My mother actually laughed. She needed to learn some shame. My father said, and in that instant, I wasn't an adult anymore. I wasn't a woman with a child, a job, a life of my own. I was a little girl again, standing in the shadow of the Thompson family, wondering if I had imagined the cruelty, wondering if maybe I deserved it. But this time, there was one thing they didn't count on. Paul, my uncle by marriage, was filming the whole family reunion for a documentary, and the wireless microphones he had planted around the house, they caught everything. Before we dive in, if you've ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or silenced by your own family, hit like and subscribe. Drop a comment if you've been the black sheep who finally said enough. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's not just a story. It's a reckoning. The golden boy and the ghost daughter, if you had met my brother Derek growing up, you'd think he was bred to succeed. Athletic, top of his class, social, charismatic. He had the golden boy aura that made teachers beam and adults praise him like he farted gold dust. Me, I was quiet, observant. I liked books more than baseball. And I asked too many questions. And in the Thompson household, that made me a problem. My father, Howard, was a well-respected corporate attorney. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. He was the kind of man who treated parenting like performance reviews. Derek got Employee of the Month every day. I got written warnings. My mother, Eleanor, was beautiful, brittle, and cold as a martini glass. She didn't yell, didn't need to. One raised eyebrow could crush my self-esteem for a week. She ran the house like a country club with a velvet glove of passive aggression. But I didn't realize how broken the dynamic was until I became a mother myself. The light named Lily. I had Lily when I was 24. Her father, Jason, was the first person who had ever really seen me. Or so I thought. We got married fast. Too fast. He was kind, gentle, but not strong. And when Lily was 3, I found out about Kara, the coworker he'd been texting after hours. The one he just clicked with. We tried counseling, but his eyes kept wandering, so I left. And I never told my parents the full story. I just said we'd grown apart, because deep down, I knew they'd blame me anyway. And they did. Men don't leave happy homes. Audrey, my mother said on the phone, as if she were offering weather updates. What did you do? The price of survival. I took a full-time admin job at Madison Marketing, balancing spreadsheets by day and bedtime stories by night. Some months, I barely made rent. Other times, a fever or a busted alternator forced me to call my parents for help, something that always came with strings attached. You need to be more responsible, my father would say, handing me a check like it was a bone to a disobedient dog. Meanwhile, Derek was soaring, youngest VP at his firm, married to Natalie, a pediatrician with the kind of background my parents worshipped country club, Ivy League, no tattoos. They didn't have kids, not yet, Derek would say with that smug, polished grin, but they had status, and in my family, that was everything. So no matter what I did, I was the failure, the invisible one, the cautionary tale they whispered about at Thanksgiving. The return to the lake house. When my father announced a big family reunion at the old lake house this summer, I hesitated. I hadn't gone in 3 years. But Lily lit up at the mention. Are there canoes and fish? Will Grandma be there? I smiled, masking the knot in my stomach. They'll all be there. Sweetheart. I rationalized it. Lily deserved to know where she came from. I told myself I was strong enough now, that I could endure 3 days of subtle digs, fake smiles, and being reminded of how less than I was. My best friend, Tara. raised an eyebrow. Don't do this. Audrey, these people don't deserve her. Or you. I smiled, said I could handle it. But I couldn't. Not this time. Why did Paul, the cameraman, suddenly nod at me during dinner? What secret was Natalie hiding behind that calm smile? Why did Derek glare at Lily every time she sang Arrival on Easy Ground? The lake house stood just as I remembered timber beams, overpriced rustic charm, and the suffocating weight of decorated appearances. I parked behind Derek's gleaming BMW and my father's custom Mercedes. My modest sedan felt like a stain on the gravel. "We're here," Lily squealed, hopping out, bright in her blue sundress. Her joy was a gut punch. I would have given anything to shield her from what I already felt coming. The door opened. My mother greeted Lily with rehearsed warmth, then gave me a once-over. "You made it," she said, eyes scanning my outfit like a TSA agent. "Traffic was heavy," I replied, already exhausted. Inside, the adults were drinking wine and talking real estate. My father stood like a general at the fireplace, discussing stock options with Uncle Robert. Then came Derek, tall, broad-shouldered, exuding curated success. His arm was around Natalie, his trophy wife. Well, he announced, the prodigal daughter returns. He looked down at Lily. "You've grown. You still sing all the time." Lily nodded shyly. "She sings beautifully," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Maybe she'll grow out of that." That night, at bedtime, Lily whispered to me, "Uncle Derek said people don't like girls who are loud." My heart broke. So it had begun. Callbacks planted early for later payoff. Paul's wireless mic set up for ambiance, he said. Natalie's glance at Derek when Lily spoke, subtle, fleeting, but haunted. My mother's praise of Derek's discipline. "You always knew how to set boundaries," she said over dinner. The second day at the lake house began deceptively calm, with sunlight streaming through thin linen curtains and the smell of overpriced catered waffles wafting from the kitchen. Lily woke up humming, already forgetting the awkward dinner, the stares, the subtle corrections from her older cousins, and the not-so-subtle ones from Derek. Her resilience was both beautiful and terrifying, because I knew that kind of joy didn't last in this house. Not when you're a girl with a bright voice and no filter. She danced in her blue butterfly dress, begging to head down to the dock after breakfast. I smiled and nodded, even as my stomach churned. I'd already decided that this would be our last day. I'd fake a migraine, pack the car, and leave after lunch. We'd drive back to our quiet apartment where no one told her to be less. But I was wrong. We wouldn't make it to lunch. Breakfast was in the great room, a cavernous showpiece of cedar beams, leather furniture, and cold energy. Every sound echoed the clink of silverware, the clipped laughter, the unspoken hierarchy of who was allowed to speak and who was merely tolerated. My father, as always, held court at the head of the long oak table, rattling off economic forecasts like he was addressing a courtroom. Derek sat to his right, basking in it. Natalie, polite and observant as ever, kept her eyes low and voice softer than usual. Lily, still blissfully unaware, started to hum, just a tune, something gentle, sweet, a melody she made up. My heart swelled until I saw Derek flinch. He didn't say anything at first. He sipped his bourbon, yes, bourbon before 10 a.m., and leaned forward slowly. "Lily," he said sharply, his voice slicing through the hum like a knife through silk. "Can you keep it down? Adults are talking." Lily blinked, startled. "Sorry, Uncle Derek." She glanced at me, unsure. I touched her hand under the table. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're fine." But Derek wasn't done. "Actually," he continued, pushing his chair back, "this is a good time to teach her something. Then, without warning. He stood, circled the table, and slapped my daughter across the face. The sound was louder than I expected. Maybe it was the acoustics of the room. Maybe it was the shock in my ears. Lily's head jerked to the side. Her fork clattered to the floor. The whole table fell into a moment of frozen silence. And then my father exhaled slowly. Discipline. He muttered, "She needed it." My mother made a tight little laugh. Well, someone had to do it. And that's when my world tilted. I couldn't breathe. My chest burned. My limbs wouldn't move fast enough. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge. I just stood, shaking, and said, "What the hell is wrong with you people?" Derek looked at me like I was the one making a scene. "Relax. Audrey, she'll be fine. You let her get away with too much." I stepped between him and my daughter, my hands trembling so violently I had to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. Lily was crying now, silently, the kind of stunned tears that don't even have sound. Natalie rose halfway from her seat, her mouth open, but said nothing. Paul, dear. Awkward Paul stood near the back corner, where his camera rig was still recording. "You hit my child," I said, my voice lower than I expected. "And you're just okay with that." "Don't be dramatic," my mother interjected. "Your tone is exactly why Jason left." That sentence unspooled something in me I didn't know was still tightly wound. A door slammed in my head. My spine straightened. I turned to Paul, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "Are the mics on?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, house audio is live. Been running since yesterday morning." Derek frowned. "Wait, what wireless mics?" Paul said, more to himself than anyone. "Your dad wanted ambient audio for the family documentary." I turned back to the table. So just to recap, my brother hit my daughter. My parents defended him. And it was all recorded. Got it. That was when Natalie finally stood. Fully. Calmly. She placed her cloth napkin on her chair and said, "Audrey, if you want to take Lily outside, I'll bring her an ice pack." Her voice was brittle but steady. I saw something in her eyes, then an old bruise. A silent admission. She knew. I led Lily out of the room, out to the porch, holding her to my chest as she hiccuped against my shoulder. The sun was too bright, the lake too still, and I realized I had no idea what to do next. Call the police, yell at Derek until my throat bled, pack up and leave. But then Paul stepped outside, his face pale. "Audrey," he began, "I've got it, all of it. That slap, the things they said, I wasn't planning on, but it's all there." I nodded slowly. "Numb. Keep it. Don't delete a second." "Okay," he said. "But there's more. There's stuff from yesterday too. The dinner, what Derek said to her, to you. It's all in there." I didn't reply, because in that moment, something colder and sharper began to take shape behind my grief. It wasn't rage. It was clarity, precision. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to destroy them. Methodically, publicly, permanently. The Thompson family had built an image. Respectable, elegant, a legacy. They'd forgotten what happens when you give the scapegoat a voice. And a microphone. And a daughter worth going to war for. As I cradled Lily and stared out at the lake, I remembered what Natalie once said to me at a family function. Years ago, when Derek humiliated me in front of guests, they don't protect you because they're scared of who you'd be if they did. Now they were about to find out. And this time, I wouldn't be alone. I didn't leave that day. It would have been the reasonable choice. The mature move to pack up my daughter, drive back to the safety of our tiny apartment, and begin the healing process away from the rot that was my family. But this wasn't just about me anymore. Lily needed to see me fight. She needed to know that silence wasn't the only way to survive cruelty. And truthfully, after what happened in that great room, I didn't trust my parents or brother not to twist the story if I disappeared. I couldn't let them reframe what happened. Not again. Not this time. So, I stayed. And I waited. That afternoon passed like a long funeral. The family splintered across the lake house, scattered like broken ornaments after a Christmas tree falls over. My father retreated to his study. My mother made herself busy rearranging flower vases and snapping at staff. Derek vanished with his phone glued to his ear, probably trying to control the narrative before I could. But the real shift happened with Natalie. She knocked on our door just before sunset, holding a small cold pack wrapped in a towel. "For Lily," she said, her voice lower than usual. Lily was asleep, curled beside me, her cheeks still blotchy from crying. I stepped out quietly, closing the door behind me. Natalie stood still in the hallway, eyes puffy, arms crossed. She looked like someone balancing on a threadbare rope stretched above a pit of regret. "I've seen him do it before," she whispered. I blinked. "Excuse me?" She swallowed. "He's never touched me. Not like that. But, Emma, once." She spilled cranberry juice on his laptop. He snapped, grabbed her arm so hard she couldn't move it the next day. Told me she tripped, but I knew. He never apologized. Just told her to be more careful. I stared at her, stunned. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because," she said bitterly, "in this family, silence is safer than truth. You know that." She looked down at her feet. "But today I can't pretend anymore. Not after Lily." A long pause settled between us, thick, knowing. We had both been trained by this house to hide our truths beneath polite smiles and strategic silence. But that was over now. "I need your help," I said finally. "I'm going to make this public, very public. I want them to feel the consequences of their cruelty. In the only currency they understand, reputation." Natalie looked up. "What do you need me to do?" And just like that, I had an ally. That night, after everyone had retreated to their separate rooms and the lake house was cloaked in expensive quiet, I sat with Paul in the editing suite he'd built in the study, a laptop, 2 external drives, and a pair of noise-canceling headphones. We worked for hours, combing through every clip, every mic channel, the slap, the comment about Jason, the way my father dismissed Lily as too sensitive, my mother muttering, "She's raising her just like herself, weak and dramatic." It was all there. And the best part, Paul had footage from previous reunions. 2, 3 years worth. Enough to paint a long, damning portrait of emotional erosion, how they coddled Derek, undermined me, belittled Natalie, and praised the most toxic behaviors as leadership and discipline. We time-stamped, clipped, and named the files with surgical precision. But we needed more. Something that didn't just expose bad behavior, but shattered the illusion they worked so hard to preserve. And that's when Natalie told me about the foundation. "The Thompson Family Resilience Initiative," she said. "They just launched it 2 months ago. Press release, photos, even a small grant fund for underprivileged youth. Your dad's using it to raise his public profile before retirement. There's a gala scheduled next month." My stomach turned. They built a legacy project about resilience. Natalie nodded, and Derek's the face of it. There it was, the Achilles heel. If I could leak the audio, just enough of it to imply a culture of abuse and hypocrisy, and tie it directly to their brand new foundation, the whole thing would collapse under public scrutiny. No court case, no cops, just social exposure and the sweet, slow rot of public shame. But it had to be airtight. We'd only get one shot. Over the next 24 hours, I played nice. I smiled at my mother during brunch. I nodded along as my father explained his plan to expand the board. I even complimented Derek's tie, because you don't dismantle a dynasty with rage. You do it with poise, timing, and a scalpel. Behind the scenes, Natalie emailed me the Foundation's internal press kit talking points. Quotes: upcoming sponsor list. Paul prepared the final edit of the audio montage, 7 minutes of clipped voices, slap echoes, dismissive chuckles, and one damning line from Derek himself: that girl needs to be taught shame. I sent the file anonymously to 3 parenting-focused journalists and 2 major influencers known for exposing family abuse dynamics. Natalie helped craft the context: a concerned family member, a legacy house of cruelty, a pattern, a child. Then we waited. And during that waiting, I looked at Lily reading on the dock, feet swinging in the sunlight, her cheeks still faintly red. I watched how she held herself, not broken, but wary, too wary for 6 years old. And I realized this wasn't just revenge. It was protection. This was a line in the sand, carved with fire. They would never hurt her again. Not physically, not psychologically, not with their words, not with their silences. 3 days later, the story broke. It began with a vague headline on a parenting blog: Legacy Families Foundation Under Fire for Hidden Audio. The clip was embedded at the top. Within 6 hours, it had 200,000 plays. By nightfall, it trended. By the next morning, local news picked it up, then national. The media flooded the foundation's socials with demands for a statement. Sponsors pulled back. Comments exploded with fury. These are the people championing resilience. Protect your daughters, don't marry into power. That audio made me sick. My mother called me in hysterics. What have you done? I didn't answer. Derek texted, "This isn't over." He was right. Because it was just beginning. The days that followed felt like watching a slow-motion avalanche, one that I had started, fully aware of the destruction, but still shocked by how fast it all unraveled. The Thompson name, once synonymous with old money elegance and philanthropic posture, was now splattered across every major parenting blog, abuse survivor network, and, eventually, a primetime news segment. The clip, 7 minutes long, uncut, cold, was being dissected on talk shows, headlines multiplied by the hour's slapgate inside the fall of the Thompson family. When respectability is a mask, Audrey Thompson's stand for her daughter. My name had surfaced only after several media outlets dug deeper. I hadn't intended to go public, but Paul warned me once it gained momentum. Anonymity wouldn't last. The moment the story touched national syndication, people began to recognize the voices, the names, the family legacy. Natalie texted me at 2 a.m., 2 days after the story broke. "They're circling the drain. Be ready," by they. She meant the board members of the Thompson Family Resilience Initiative, the PR team behind my father's firm, and Derek's employer, who had just placed him on indefinite leave, pending an internal review. My mother hadn't spoken to me since her meltdown call, but she had issued a statement to the press. The comments captured in the audio do not reflect the values we hold as a family. We are deeply saddened and are conducting an internal review. The irony made me laugh out loud. They'd spent their entire lives avoiding self-reflection, and now they were launching an internal review of what their own cruelty. Derek, on the other hand, wasn't playing defense. He was trying to fight. He emailed me directly, then tried to call, then texted from an unknown number with a message so perfectly crafted I could smell the lawyer's cologne on it. I suggest we discuss this like adults before further damage is done. What's best for Lily should be everyone's priority. It was both a threat and a performance of reason. I ignored it. Natalie, however, didn't. She had already filed for separation and had spoken to a lawyer who specialized in child protection. What Derek didn't know yet was that Natalie had quietly been documenting his behavior for years, photos of bruises on Emma's arms, a journal of incidents, email threads where he dismissed concerns with phrases like, "You're being hysterical," or "She'll thank me when she's older." She had enough for a restraining order. She was ready to burn the bridge and salt the earth behind her. Meanwhile, Paul's footage was requested for a feature documentary being developed around power, family image, and the psychological cost of generational trauma. He hesitated, unsure if he wanted to be a part of something so large and personal, but after watching the footage again, especially the part where Derek bragged about teaching Lily shame, he agreed. This story isn't just about them. He said to me, "It's about how many families like this go unchecked for generations. If it helps someone else, I'm in." The storm kept growing, and with it came both support and pushback. Thousands of comments poured in. Most were supportive people sharing their own stories of being scapegoated, dismissed, emotionally abused. But there were others too. Trolls, defenders of traditional parenting, people who said I was making a scene for attention, that kids need a firm hand, that airing family matters is classless. I read every comment, not because I cared what they thought, but because I needed to remind myself why I did this. Every time a mother wrote, "You gave me courage," or "Now I know I'm not crazy," I felt a small piece of myself return. Lily, thankfully, was insulated from the chaos. She didn't know what had happened online, didn't see the headlines, didn't hear the interviews. She just knew she wasn't going back to Grandma's house anymore. When I asked her how she felt about that, she nodded slowly and said, "It didn't feel like home." Anyway, that sentence stayed with me, because I had spent 3 decades trying to make that place feel like home, and she saw through it in 6 years. I hadn't just broken a cycle. I had raised a child who never stepped into it to begin with. But even as I tried to protect her peace, I knew the confrontation wasn't over. Derek wasn't the type to let things go. And sure enough, a week after the story peaked, I received a formal letter. It was from his attorney, a cease and desist, alleging defamation, threatening civil suit, demanding all recordings be taken down. I read the letter twice, calmly, then emailed it to my own lawyer, someone I had connected with through a survivors advocacy group. He skimmed it and responded with a single sentence, "Let them try." Because the truth was, we had more than just audio. We had witnesses, documentation, context, pattern, Paul's footage, Natalie's evidence, Emma's quiet confirmation. The Thompson family had always operated under the belief that reputation was more powerful than reality. But now reality had gone viral. 2 days after the letter, my father stepped down from the board of the foundation to focus on private matters. The foundation's website went dark the next day. My mother issued a new statement, vaguer, colder, and clearly drafted by lawyers. And Derek. He disappeared, deleted his social media, retreated from public view. Rumor had it he'd checked into a private wellness facility somewhere in Arizona for stress. I didn't care. I wasn't seeking his destruction. I was demanding recognition. A public acknowledgement that what they did was wrong, that the pedestal they stood on was built from broken daughters and silenced sons. But still, some part of me wondered if it was over, if there was anything else that would come crashing down. Then, one morning, I received an email from a stranger. It was a woman in her early 40s. She had recognized Derek's voice in the audio. He had taught briefly at a corporate leadership seminar she attended years ago, and she remembered something odd, something Derek had said during a Q&A. If your team doesn't respect you, make them fear you. Fear sticks. She had it on video, a clip buried in a company newsletter archive. She attached it to the email with one line: "I thought you might want this. Truth deserves company." That night, as I watched the clip, Derek standing at a podium, smiling as he described leadership as control, I realized this wasn't just a victory. It was a turning point, a chance to help rewrite what strength actually looks like. Not domination, not silence, not slaps disguised as lessons, but boundaries, voice, courage. 6 months after the story broke, I found myself standing on the stage of a local community center, not in a courtroom, not behind a podium, but in front of 25 women and a few men, all seated in a semicircle, eyes fixed on me. The words I was about to speak didn't come from a script. They came from a place I didn't even know existed until that day in the lake house when my daughter got slapped and no one blinked. I used to think survival meant keeping the peace. I told them, now I know survival is teaching your child they deserve better, even if it costs you everything you came from. The applause was quiet but sincere, and the emotion in the room was tangible, raw. It wasn't a seminar. It was our first official meeting of new branches. The support network I launched with Natalie, Paul, and Tara's help, a place for parents, survivors, and anyone trying to escape the generational rot of emotional violence masked as family values. What began as a digital support group quickly evolved into in-person meetups, therapy partnerships, even legal aid referrals. I never intended to lead a movement. I just wanted to protect my daughter. But sometimes, protecting one person ignites 1,000 more. Back in our apartment, life was quieter now, steady. No tabloids, no threat letters, no midnight anxiety spirals. Lily had started at a new school with a music program she adored. Her teacher said she had an intuitive sense of melody and encouraged her to sing freely. She still had scars, hesitations when adults spoke too loudly. Subtle flinches at reprimands, but she was healing. We both were. Every morning, she greeted me with a song, sometimes nonsense lyrics, sometimes soft lullabies. Each one felt like proof that the cycle was broken. As for the rest of the Thompsons, silence. Mostly, Derek never resurfaced in any meaningful way. Rumor had it he was trying to reinvent himself through some startup focused on emotional resilience for corporate leaders. I didn't bother to check. Natalie finalized her divorce and retained full custody of Emma. She and I became close, more than allies, sisters by fire. We met weekly, often over coffee or while Lily and Emma played in the park. We rarely spoke of Derek. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to explain. My parents, predictably, faded from view. My father's law firm issued a quiet retirement notice with no farewell gala, no glowing tributes, just a line: Howard Thompson has chosen to conclude his tenure to focus on private matters. I never received an apology, not from him, not from my mother. The most I got was a Christmas card that read, "We hope Lily is well. We're sorry for any misunderstandings." I threw it in the trash. There's a kind of freedom that comes from no longer expecting closure. It lets you build something new without waiting for validation that will never come. Paul, meanwhile, had finished his documentary Legacy: What We Leave Behind. It premiered at a regional film festival to a standing ovation. One critic called it a quiet war cry against performative family perfection. He interviewed me for it. Once, I sat in his garage turned studio, under soft lighting, answering questions I thought I had already exhausted. But one stuck with me. He asked, "What do you think you broke most in them trust? Legacy or control?" I paused, then said, "None. I didn't break anything. I just stopped pretending it was whole." And that was the truth of it. The house didn't collapse because I set it on fire. It collapsed because the foundation was already cracked. All I did was pull back the curtain. The rest caved in on its own. And somewhere in that rubble, I found myself not the version they tolerated, not the version I edited to fit into rooms that hated sharp edges, but the real one, angry, clear-eyed, and unwilling to be silenced again. People often ask me if I'd do it the same way if I'd go public. Risk my name. Expose my own family. My answer is always the same. I didn't destroy my family. I just refused to be destroyed by them. There's a difference. There's power in it. Sometimes, justice doesn't look like a courtroom or a headline. Sometimes it's a little girl with her mother on a park bench, singing without fear. Sometimes it's the absence of dread, of silence, of shame. That's what victory looked like for me. Not revenge, not destruction, but the reclamation of joy, quiet, ordinary joy. The kind of joy that once seemed impossible in the Thompson house. And in those moments, I remind myself I did not walk away from that family. I walked toward my daughter. I walked toward a new way of being. I walked toward truth. And it was worth every step. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been made to feel small in the name of tradition, or family, or legacy, hear me. You don't owe anyone your silence, not even your blood. The line ends with you. If this story struck a chord, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Have you ever walked away from a toxic family pattern? Drop your story in the comments we read. Everyone's, and if you want more true stories like this, follow for our next deep dive. They left me out of the will. Because I spoke the truth. Now I own the house. Until next time, take care of yourself and never apologize for healing out loud.